Hi, everybody. Welcome into another edition, episode 105 of the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast, Mechanical Breakdown Series, Volume 34, breaking down the swing today of Red Sox shortstop, Xander Bogaerts. I'm very excited to do this one, and so is my podcast partner, professional evaluator, successful business owner, former coach, friend, co-host, Jake Epstein. What's cooking? Good looking.
I don't know. I feel like we need some kind of background music during your intro,
Yeah, like from one
like
of
the
those.
NBA.
Yeah. Or the ESPN ABC NHL song.
Yes.
Ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, ba.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the more underrated sports songs, by the way, in all just all across all four major sports.
Speaking of the NHL,
Yeah.
I was just trying to poke the bear, but apparently you're over it.
I don't know what you're poking here.
On to 2023. I get you. So there's a kid I train here, Henry, and Henry's a big kid, and his dad works for the Avalanche, and so he sent me a picture on the plane with the trophy. How cool is that? Like, kid got to hold the trophy, see the trophy. He's like 13 years old. So cool. Don't worry, I'm sure the Lightning got to do the same thing with someone last year, 2 years ago. Okay. This was just cool. I thought it was cool. And you're so angry right now. Better talk about Bogaerts.
This is great. This is a great little test there to show how valuable I am to this show. Just kind of sit here and let you go off and try to perform on your own. Not that you
Good
can't.
test, my friend.
Not that you can, but over a long, sustained period of time, I start to wonder.
Nope, I need leads and questions. That's the only way it works.
That's right. You need somebody to drive the old ship.
That's it.
I have a question for you, though, hitting wise. So Alec Bohm on Friday night hit two home runs for the Phillies in St. Louis off Adam Wainwright. Unfortunately for Wainwright, it was a complete game loss. It sucks sometimes to be a pitcher, but it sucks 10 times more to be a hitter most times based off the numbers. Now, Alec Bohm, he had two home runs. He's had his ups and downs this year. Two home runs, though, on Friday night. How does a hitter just in general, we talked last week about the mental side of hitting. Mentally, how does a hitter take that momentum, hitting two home runs or having a great game going 4 for 4, take that result from the previous game and continue to ride that momentum into the next day, and of course, the week or two beyond that?
Yeah, usually it creates a routine, and a lot of times there's superstition involved. So he's probably eating the same thing he ate when he hit the two home runs.
Yeah,
he's probably going to do the same kind of BP, the same kind of warm up. He's going to try to keep his routine consistent because it worked. Whatever it was, it probably had nothing to do with that, but maybe he did more opposite field hitting in BP that day, or maybe he did more pull side, hitting in BP that day. So he'll probably continue that. Plus it creates, a sense of calm. Like, I'm hitting the ball good. I'm in my routine. I'm doing the same exact thing. And now all of a sudden he has, some positive vibes going into his next game. Maybe it was his approach. I was looking for this, or I was looking for that, middle in, middle away, up, down, whatever it was. And he'll probably stick to that same plan. And then if he gets pitched according to that plan that he put in place, now all of a sudden we have, 2 or 3 good games in a row. And then it will kind of snowball from there and ride it out a little bit further.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I was thinking about this last night too. I feel bad for the Mets. And we have a mutual friend from the Mets to this podcast, Eric Chavez, the hitting coach, of course, for the New York Mets. What's happening now with New York, of the injuries and everything else, it's not any way, shape, or form his fault. But I mean, the Braves are just arguably the best team in all of baseball right now with the way they're playing. They've got the most wins since June 1st, and they just continue to win. I mean, it's just over and over and over again. I mean, they took 2 of 3 from the Cardinals. They beat the Nationals on Friday night. 10-2. They beat up on them, and it's just the Braves are they're creeping up again on the Mets. It's like deja vu. Bad for the Mets and the fans every year. It's deja vu again in 2022. Although the Mets do have some reinforcements coming, so it's good news for them.
They do, yeah. I think the Mets will be fine. They're under a good leadership too. A guy that's more of a steady leader. And Buck Showalter. So. I mean, injuries happen, and injuries are part of it. And teams get hot. Teams get really hot, like the Braves are. And you hope that at some point they cool off, or at some point you play them. They're beating up on NL Central teams. They're not necessarily beating up on the Mets themselves, but you gotta stay in it. You're at the halfway point. You can't. You're feeling so good all year, and then all of a sudden here comes the team that won it last year, right? They're on your heels and they're cruising in, and it's like, oh no, you can't have those negative thoughts in there. You just got to keep going. You got 80 games left, 83, 84 games left. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, and credit to Steve Cohen and to Billy Epler. I wonder with Billy Epler, I think we're getting more of a broader picture as to what kind of general manager and front office executive he is. I don't think he was given the right resources when he was with the Angels, who are a dumpster fire right now. By the way, the Phillies are also in the National League East hunt, more so the wild card hunt. But you know who else is in the wild card hunt? And I said this maybe not a few weeks back, a couple of months back now, a team that could be in the wild card hunt come the All-Star break. That's the Miami Marlins.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know you did.
Maybe I'm not as crazy as everybody says.
Well, you don't know what everyone says, Jim.
I don't. I'd rather not know. I mean, quite frankly, I really don't care. But what I do care about is that the Marlins are, I think, 3 games out as we talk to you on this release date, July 11th, 2022. I'm not saying they're going to make the postseason or playoffs. I'm just saying that they win the games that they need to win, and they also beat teams that are better than them.
Yes. And they're definitely doing that.
You want to get into Xander Bogaerts now?
Sure.
I can talk about the Marlins all day. But we'll get into Xander Bogaerts, the topic of our episode this week, 105, Mechanical Breakdown Series, Volume 34. By the way, you can check out all of our Mechanical Breakdown episodes and swing analysis on our YouTube page, the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast YouTube page. Be sure to subscribe to that. Xander Bogaerts, 3-time All-Star, 4-time Silver Slugger. But I've said this before on the program. I truly believe, Ep, that he is one of the more underrated players, shortstops in all of Major League Baseball. I think of the movie Moneyball. I like that movie. But the one thing that's never mentioned, and he makes a brief cameo in it, it's old highlights from 2002, Miguel Tejada. Miguel Tejada, back in the day when you had Nomar Garciaparra, you had Derek Jeter. I mean, those two were the two highly talked about shortstops, one in New York, one in Boston. But Miguel Tejada in 2002 and 2003 arguably was the best shortstop among the group and the best shortstop in the league. And that's kind of how I look at Xander Bogaerts. By the way, Bogaerts and Tejada, there's a good comp there. But I look at Bogaerts as a guy who right now is one of the more underlooked and underrated, undervalued shortstops and players in all of baseball.
In a huge market. It just doesn't, I don't understand why he doesn't get the press that he deserves. Like even if he was in LA, but being in the East Coast, a large market, I don't know. Maybe because Boston, hasn't been in the series, the last they haven't had big playoff runs. Although I thought last year they had a decent playoff run.
They won the World Series in 2018.
Yeah, right. So I don't know. I don't know why he doesn't get the press. Tejada was an all-star every year too, but it was short-lived, and there were rumors of performance-enhancing drugs. Right, he was on the Giambi teams, that were pretty bulky guys, and I think all of a sudden he just went away. Like he got for whatever reason his career ended short. Right, he just dropped off big time. So, I think that's why people forget about him. But during his heyday, he was unbelievable. And Bogaerts is just consistent. His slugging percentage is always decent. He's a good fielding infielder. He's on base. I'm trying to think his on base percentage is always in the mid threes, I think. I had his stats pulled up here a second ago.
Well,
he hits 300. He's just a good, solid, everyday player. You can't ask for anything more than that.
And just to add more context to what you're saying, he's not an all-star this year. Now, mind you, through 79 games, he's hitting 311. His OPS is 839, 7 home runs. Never really been a big power guy. 34 RBIs. He's in the top 10 in a lot of offensive categories across baseball, including wins above replacement. He's 8th, and on base percentage, I think he's 8th in that category as well. It's amazing that this guy's is criminally underrated.
He's still, and I don't know if it's the Boston press that just doesn't give him, as much ink. Maybe he's just, a quieter guy. He's not super outspoken. He doesn't want to do a lot of interviews. Maybe that's what it is, but steady, and he has hit 20, 30 home runs a year before. So we'll see. His swing is so compact and adjustable and short to the ball and long through it that he's going to be consistent. His swing is not going to get in the way of his consistency. And obviously he has major league ability and vision and talent and the right mental makeup. So, his swing, the swing we're going to look at today is one that I provide all my online members. We'll use it as comps because it is so good. It's Vladdy good. Man, he hit a home run on a hanging breaking pitch, by the way. My guy.
Your guy.
Okay. Since he hit a hanging curveball, he's been hitting breaking balls all day. And you see him, he's just sitting on this breaking ball. It's 80 miles an hour, and there's no, he is on it. There's no, adjustment to it. He sits behind it. It's really hard to sit behind something 80 miles an hour when, most people are throwing 95. And he sits behind it, he waits for it, and just absolutely smoked it. And he was so short to the ball on it that it's just a swing that you can replicate. And that's kind of what Bogaerts is doing here. It's the top of the food chain mechanically, where if you deviate from perfection, we're still better than everyone else. And that's what all the drills that I have in the online academy we're overdoing moves, right? We're staying shorter of the ball than you ever had to, so that if you aren't perfect, you're still 100%. So we're constantly training at 125%. It's just like training speed, right? If you're facing a guy throwing 100 miles an hour, maybe you crank up a machine to 105, and you don't even hit, maybe you take a swing every 3 or 4 pitches, but the big leaguers are they're overdoing the speed or the break, so that when they get in a real environment, it's a little bit easier. And that's what we're going to do with our mechanics too. And we'll see that with Bogaerts because he's very, very efficient.
I would like to see it too. So I think you should maybe send me the video.
Oh,
I forgot to mention that pre-show. When you get a chance, we got all day. You're too busy yapping in the beginning of the show about some stupid hockey team in Colorado. So.
No, I was just trying to get the code going. Okay, hold on. Let's see if I can share this with you, Jim. So you
can send it to you can send it to my telephone.
Okay.
As you've done many times in the past. Let me export
it to your telephone. Here it comes.
Hey, with Bogaerts, here's a guy who's approaching 150 home runs and 300 stolen bases. What kind of, again, we mentioned it, 7 home runs this year, so not much power. What kind of hitter overall, what kind of player would you categorize Xander Bogaerts?
Oh, he's definitely a high contact hitter. He's going to be a low line drive, to medium line drive hitter. He's going to make a lot of solid contact, but his launch angle is not going to be as high as somebody that's dropping under the pitch plane as much.
Right.
And we have to categorize. I have a player I'm working with now that's really big, and you can tell he's going to be big. He's only 13, but he's like 6'2". He's skinny, but he's starting to fill out. It's like, you're probably going to be in that, maybe not as thick as Judge, but you're going to be 6'5", right? And it's okay if you drop under the pitch plane a little bit and your misses are bottom of the ball. Okay, so that's his category. He doesn't run real well. He's going to be probably a left fielder or a right fielder, maybe a first baseman. So you categorize that. But right now, I'm not. I'm making him more of a line drive gap hitter, and his line drives just go. He's 13. He hits the balls 92 miles an hour. like off the bat. It's insane.
What's the equivalent? What's the equivalent for a pitcher? What would he be throwing miles per hour at that age?
What a great question. That's probably a pitcher at age 13 throwing in the mid 80s.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, okay. Like 85 miles an hour, 86 miles
an hour. Add further context to how good that number is, right?
He's just now it's not as consistent as we want to be. So we're trying to get him obviously more consistent and flattening out that swing point. And then, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, if he does end up dropping a little bit, it's going to be okay because his misses are going to go, 380 feet. So with Bogaerts, we're not doing that. With Bogaerts, he's getting to the pitch plane and then he's staying through that pitch plane. So he's going to hit more the middle of the ball. He's not going to foul as many balls off that are hittable. He's not going to foul a lot of balls off up and to the right. He's going to hit more low line drives to right field, and he's going to hit more higher line drives to left center field. So that's why I said it's the perfect swing to teach a young player, because that's what we want all young players to do until they're, strong enough to hit balls over the outfielder's head. There's no reason for them to try to launch balls 35 degrees when they're just, weak fly balls to the outfield.
So when he's going well, Bogaerts, he's gap to gap, line drive, gap to gap going the other way. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he goes the other way, but not like a Jeter went the other way. Mm-hmm. He pulls balls a little bit more than Jeter does, but yes, he stays inside the ball so well, which we'll see. He gets the knob, his knob out in front of his barrel. He uses his hands to get out in front, and anytime you do that, you lag the barrel back a little bit more, and you're less likely to hook balls. So he's going to be a gap to gap guy.
Be sure to email us to your questions, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com, and subscribe to the show on YouTube. Go ahead. What?
Like, where is Xander Bogaerts going to end up after this season?
That's a great question for somebody not named other than us to ask.
Dave Dombrowski. Is he still the GM there, Boston? Dombrowski?
Oh, my God. You're way behind, my brother.
Really?
Dombrowski's the vice president of the Phillies now.
Oh, that's right. What year is this? 2016? No. Okay.
You're all right today?
I forgot they paid him all that money to leave.
You're having a heck of a show.
The COS team still. All right, John Henry's still the owner. Do we have that?
He's still the owner. Last I checked.
Okay.
Chaim Bloom is the general manager now of the
That's right. The smart guy from.
Should I pick this? Should I do my last year around this time? Before this time, I picked my World Series winning team, and I've picked correctly now since 2016. So I have to keep the streak going. Should I pick my team now?
Let's wait for the break. What do we have? One more day?
No,
Tuesday?
No, you're way off again. We have like a week.
Another week?
Yeah.
It's another week. That's right, because the draft is next week.
I mean, could I put the Red Sox in that category of teams that I think could win the World Series? Because, I have my reasons, and I'm not going to say them on this show. You
can do whatever you want. It's a podcast.
Yeah, but I mean, there has to be structure.
Oh.
And I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to break my streak.
Yeah, you better put some more thought into it instead of just, blurting it out.
I blurted it out last year, and I won with the Braves.
You did.
Never go against AA in Atlanta.
I know.
He's good. Subscribe to the show as well. Apple, Google, Spotify on the audio side. The Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast on YouTube for videos and clips and all that stuff you do on YouTube. Whatever you do on YouTube. All right, you ready to get into the swing of Xander Bogaerts Mechanical Breakdown Series, Volume 34? I did get it on my telephone, so now I can follow along like a good student and a good co-host. Mechanical Breakdown Series, Xander Bogaerts.
All right, so here's Bogaerts in the launch position, and we talk a lot about launch to extension because that's the swing. How you get to launch is how you get to launch. Can you get there on time? Can you get there in a very relaxed manner where you're not rushing and you don't get your hands back all the time? Actually, one of the things, this is good for all the players watching, is where his hands are at launch, they're back. If you rush your stride and your stride is too fast, and we monitor a lot of that, both when I'm doing, personal lessons or online stuff, and then at the lab too, if your rhythm is too fast, then a lot of times your hands don't get back all the way. And I've had that a couple times this summer, is that players are so concerned, or spring actually, players are so concerned about being short to the ball, which is great. But short to the ball happens when we go to rotate. It doesn't happen when we start. And so what happens is they start with their hands too close to their body sometimes, and it'll mess things up. So we're going to go launch to contact here. And you can see, you know, if we look at this position of his left arm, if I put an angle on it, a lot of players try to keep this at like, you know, say 90 degrees. But if we trace his arm, you can see it's at, you know, 135-ish, 130 to 135. Totally fine. I don't really care where it is to start. Probably not 180, wouldn't be good. But definitely usually around 120 is what I look for. But if we watch him go from, actually, let's keep watching here. I'm sorry, let's keep him in the same position. If we look at where his chest is facing towards his back foot, and you can see his hips are open, but they're fairly square. He's not a huge, like, cheating open with his front hip, but he's still at 35 degrees of separation here. Okay, and we're most big leaguers 30 to 40. We've talked about sometimes we're 42. We talked about Donaldson being on that 42. Sometimes Miguel Cabrera is on the 42 because he keeps his chest back so well and really opens his hips. But really 35 is fantastic. You know, that's that kind of meaning. You can see if you look at his shirt, you know, this is a great video quality, by the way. That's why we're using it. But you can see all the wrinkles in his shirt, you know, on his left obliques there. He's got great separation, but it doesn't look stressed, right? He's not overcooking it. He's not uncomfortable. Now, as he goes to rotate, okay, I want you to watch his hands. What did we say? We said his left arm was like at 135 or so. But as he comes through to his short approach, because this pitches in a little bit more, now he has the ability to get his left arm to, you know, maybe a little bit more than 90 degrees. If it was an outside pitch, it would have stayed at probably 120 degrees. But he has the flexibility, he has the ability to do this, to stay shorter to the ball. Think about the figure skater. We talked about it, you know, before. When the figure skater brings their arms from far away, so I'm going to bring him back to launch, to closer, we are able to rotate faster, right? When our arms are away from us, we don't rotate as much. That's why it's one of the reasons, not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons we don't hit the ball as far to right field. Okay, we don't rotate as fast, and we don't rotate as much on pitches to the, I shouldn't say to right field, but to the opposite field. Okay, so he's going from, I mean, you could use it longer with his hands to shorter with his hands. So if you look at his short approach, it looks like, you know, every great hitter, chest facing the front foot, knob in front of the back elbow. Okay, the front, there's some space between his chest and his left arm. He's going to keep pulling that forward. So now we're going to bring him to the approach. The approach is when the bat is parallel to the camera, right? Okay, so you can see his knob doesn't quite slide out in front as much as I would like to see. So if we look at his left elbow in the approach, again, that's when the barrel is equidistant, the barrel and the knob are equidistant from the camera. Okay, the bat's in a straight line parallel to the pitch. You can see how his elbow's out in front. Okay, so sometimes what this does is this lets our barrel come out and drop. Well, his really doesn't. His drops a little bit. So I'm going to keep him coming here. And the reason is because this is an inside pitch and he hits it deeper. So when the inside pitch, when we don't hit the inside pitch out in front as much as we should, we have to let the barrel go away from our body sooner. Okay, so that's why that's happening. But if I put a line on this pitch, okay, so I'm going to grab the ball and I'm going to try to create a line here towards the catcher's mitt where he's going to catch. It looks like a 4-degree down slope. Okay, it's probably a little bit more than that. So now I got to go back, probably about 6. So bear with me. Okay, there's 6. So you'll see his barrel. There we go. Now we're on. You can see his barrel get to that line, but it doesn't go under it, right? His barrel's not getting down in here, and then he has to come back up. His barrel gets to the line right about at his front thigh, so he can at least battle and foul that off. This one he hits right at his front shin. So remember, look, see the catcher's mitt? This pitch is inside, so he's beat. This is why good mechanics are saviors. He's beat. You don't want to hit the inside pitch behind your front foot. Okay. Maybe he had 2 strikes. I don't know. Okay. And so he had to protect everything. All of a sudden he sees a pitch in, and he had to, that's the reason he had to get his left arm so bent here. And the reason he had to get the barrel around a little bit sooner too. So he hits this ball square, I would say probably to center or just to the left of center, and then watch his barrel stay through it. See how long he stays through that line? So if you look at his right arm, if you see a player in this power V position, pretty amazing. Left arm here, this is textbook. Right arm here, bat shooting kind of right out between, okay? So if I see a player like that, I'm usually saying to myself, okay, that pitch is probably right down the middle. Then I come back here and I see a player at the launch position. I'm like, what a wonderful launch position. And then I go a little bit further and I see him right here at the short approach. I'm like, oh man, he's really crammed up there. So usually what you're going to see with players when they get crammed up here, meaning with their arms, where the left arm bends a lot, is they never get extended. So the beauty of, Bogaerts is he is short to the ball. His barrel, his barrel arc kind of comes around that way. Okay. So he's short to it, but then once he gets to that pitch plane at about his front thigh, now all of a sudden, he's happy for like a good 16 inches, 18 inches in the contact zone. So he's short to it. When people talk about short to it and long through it, that's about as good as it gets. So that's why I like to use this as an example is, look, we want to have the ability to bend our arm like that, but it doesn't always have to start like that. So if we just look at these frames here from launch to short approach, it doesn't always have to do that. Okay, but that's us training like our upper body drills. Notice how the back gets closer to his shoulder as he rotates. That's pretty cool. Starts further away, and then that back comes right down next to the shoulder. And that's why it doesn't matter where we stride or how we hitch or whatever, as long as we get to a good launch position on time. And that's why he's going to be successful. That's why Bogaerts is, he's going to hit, 290 to 310, most of his career is because of his hand path. And he's going to have some power because he creates separation, but because he doesn't have a big barrel drop, he's not going to hit a lot of home runs. If he wanted to hit 35 home runs, he probably could. He would have to adjust his body and maybe his swing plane so that he got under pitches more, but he also wouldn't hit 290 to 310. He'd probably hit 240 to 250.
Great analysis as always. You took a lot of words out of my mouth there, because just watching this video, and again, this for those listening on the audio side, this is a lot better. Our mechanical breakdowns to view on our YouTube page for the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast YouTube page. But at first, I thought it was an outside pitch with where his hips were placed with the bat leg.
Yeah.
But then I noticed, like you did, the catcher's glove, and the catcher's. This is in the Bronx too, by the way. So whoever's behind the plate, his glove, it's probably from a couple of years ago, so it might be like Romine or Higashioka, whoever. But that glove is drifting to the inside. Now with Bogaerts, what I look at, I have my freeze frame here on my phone of him at the point of contact. But the reason that, and I think you alluded to it, that he got to that inside pitch and he barreled it up was because he has such great mechanics. But this is why I look at the bat path and I look at attack angle more than I do launch angle, because this, to me, he was late on this, but I think he still had a pretty good attack angle from launch to contact to be able to get to that pitch and barrel it up. Yeah,
he made a great adjustment because his body allowed, his body allowed him to make that adjustment. And yeah, I mean, if you look at contact for a pitch that's somewhat middle in, and I don't know how much in, because I don't know if the catcher was outside and then reached across, but it was definitely in, probably ball 1 or ball 2 off the plate. For him to look so natural at point of contact on an inside pitch that he let get deep, is very hard to do. And I see it all the time. I see players that are taught to let everything get really deep and try to hit everything, behind their front foot. And that's what they end up with is elbows that are, I mean, if you're watching online, elbows that are just tight at contact.
Right. And you mentioned just scrunched his body in a way, right? On this swing.
He did, but he scrunched it early.
Right.
He didn't scrunch it at point of contact. And so what happens, just be mindful and be careful as you're practicing out there. especially if you have youngsters, that are playing T-ball, or very young, and you're using the tee a lot with them, make sure that it's never set up, behind their front foot when they make point of contact. Make sure it's always at their front foot. Make sure it's out in front a little bit. Otherwise, you will build a swing that is very tight and spinny. And I will be honest, that is one of the hardest things for me to fix. I have players in the academy right now. If you're listening, you know who they are. We've been working on it for months, getting them out of that. Because what happens is when your elbows stay tight and you just turn, is your contact zone's probably, 5-6 inches at the most. And it could be double to triple that size if you use your hands and arms correctly. And for some reason, it seems easier for me to get players that are too long, get them fixed, than it is players that are too tight, because it's not natural. Being too tight is not a natural swing. Like, kids aren't born with that. For the, I would say 1 out of 50 kids, 1 out of 100 kids maybe will come with elbows that are really tight. But I can always tell whenever I see them come in through the online academy, I'm like, please tell me what you've been taught, because I know they've been taught something, because it's not a natural move. What is your instructor? What is your dad? What is the philosophy you've been following? Because it will tell me, how difficult it's going to be to change. And, 99 times out of 100, it's, we've been working on, this program, and then I have to try to fix them.
All right. Well, great stuff this week. And again, to watch this show, and it's better for the viewing audience, the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast YouTube page. Let's get quickly to our listener question sent to us on our YouTube page, the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast. It is from MLB_ZITY. And he writes, ideally, this was his question, when the hitter strides, where do you want the belt buckle facing? Home plate, back, or forward? It's a torque question there. I don't know if we use torque anymore. Separation.
Yeah, no, that's not I wouldn't call that a solid, like everybody's the same. Mm-hmm. A lot of people that cock their front hip, like a Bryce Harper, during the stride, his belt is going to be facing behind home plate. Mm-hmm. You definitely don't want it facing in front of home plate during the stride. That's probably sometimes I do see that, and I'll see it with left-handed hitting, right-hand throwing players, is during the step, their front knee will kind of open instead of close. Like if you think Bryce Harper, again, his front knee is very closed during the stride. So if the front knee is closed, typically the belt is good. Okay. So kind of focus on that front knee, turning that front hip. And so I would say at the plate would be okay. You have to make sure the chest is facing back. That's usually, if the chest is good, usually the front leg will be good. Most of the time, maybe 75% of the time, but on occasion with that awkward lefty, they'll do that. So the key is it's closed. It's closed. It's either closed to the plate or it's closed, behind the plate. And then when they land, right when that front foot goes from like toe touch to heel plant, sometimes slightly before, if guys are jump starting their hips, that are really aggressive with their lower body, then that belt buckle is going to start to turn and open and face in front of home plate. But you don't want it to do that until the front foot strikes the ground.
All right. Thank you very much, MLB_ZITY. Any questions, of course, email us, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com, or you can always leave a comment on our YouTube page. We'll try to get to them. And if we don't, it's bigger things in life to worry about, right?
Yep.
Like gas prices.
Oh.
Like the weather. It's very hot in Tampa right now. It's sticky.
It's very hot in Denver today, 97.
No humidity. I've been out there in the summer. Don't try to fool me, young man.
Yeah, no humidity.
Next week, we are talking about hitting, how it's always changing and evolving. This was something that was mentioned and talked about in one of your father's books, and we're going to dive deeper into that. That is next week. So join us, episode 106. I've got a new podcast coming out July 20th, our first episode Wednesday with Cassie Riley Bosia, Cross Functionality. Again, be on the lookout for that. I will be promoting the link to where you can subscribe. That'll be a really fun coaching podcast with a former college baseball player and a former college softball player, a national champion. But I was never a national champion, although in my own mind, I am a champion. I was never a national champion, though. And Cassie was. So we'll be doing that podcast coming up on July 20th, our first episode. I had to push it back a week. I'm sorry. What do you got coming up at the lab?
We have our Scout Yard nights coming up this summer, and then we'll be launching it this fall. So that's for our high school players. Essentially, we invite all the local. We have so many local colleges to come out. So from Rice down in Houston to Texas A&M to Baylor, those assistant coaches will be able to come out and recruit. Plus all the junior colleges, Sam Houston State, kind of the lower D1s. So we're launching that. Those are games in the evenings under the lights. So pretty awesome stuff there. We're doing those on Wednesdays, and then they'll be on Tuesdays this fall when they'll really get ramped up. So that's kind of the big happenings at the lab.
All righty. Good stuff. Episode 106 next week. Be sure to subscribe to the show on the audio and video side. And we'll talk to you then. Have a great week.